Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 4 days since my last confession. I've been spending a lot of time watching Elizabeth. Is that a sin? Every day I sit in the field and watch her house. I see her coming and going, making dinner, crying. She does a lot of crying since she split from Adrian. It's nice, she looks so beautiful when she cries. One time, when we were dating, we had a weekend in Amsterdam, and I remember we went to the Anne Frank Museum. We were looking at the displays about the Holocaust and what happened to Anne after she was captured, and Elizabeth starts to cry. She was always sensitive about stuff like that. I stand back and watch her, and she looks just like an angel, so vulnerable and sweet. And suddenly I realised I was standing in a museum about Nazi death camps with a huge grin on my face, getting a very dirty look from an old Jewish couple in the corner. I quickly became very interested in Mrs. Van Dunn's chamber pot. I know you think I shouldn't keep watching her, Father, but I need to know what's going on in her life so I can suss out ways to be of service like I promised. After I helped her dump that bastard Hadley, I didn't get any chances for a couple of days, but then yesterday, something happened. Mid-afternoon, she left the house and got in the car. She doesn't drive much, except to go to work. She does a bit of waitressing, but really she's an actress. They're doing an inspector course at the minute. Anyway, she gets in the car and drives off, but not in the direction of the cafe or the theatre. So I'm like, where's she going? And I had nowhere to find out. In the old days, I'd have followed at a safe distance, but I had a car then. Now all I could do was stand behind my hedge and watch her vanish over the horizon. Well, behind the co-op. But we can't have this, can we? This situation where she can do as she pleases and I'm left in the dark. The other thing I used to do was keep notes. I kept track of everything in a little book. Among other things, I recorded the reading on her odometer, so if she did go out and I couldn't follow, I could try to figure out where she'd been from the mileage. Didn't always work, but I had a couple of interesting results. This one time she did a 32.6 mile round trip. She was gone like 90 minutes, so she can't have been wherever she went more than half an hour. A shopping trip maybe, but she didn't have any bags when she got in. She just sat in the kitchen and worked her way through 2 bottles of wine. Clearly, wherever she'd been, it wasn't much fun. That night I spent a couple of hours on the AA route planner trying out possibilities. Eventually I hit on a match that fitted. It was a 32.6 mile round trip to the nearest abortion clinic. The thing is, this wasn't long after we split up, and I'd have known if she'd been with any other men. It had to be mine. I'll tell you the thing that made me smile. Those 2 bottles of wine. If she felt the need to drown her sorrows, some part of her must have regretted the decision, right? At some level, she wanted my baby. I carried that home with me for a long time. Anyway, back to yesterday. It was time to start keeping track of Elizabeth's mileage again, so I wandered into town to buy myself a notebook. Only when I got back, I must have left the gate open because a couple of the cows had got out, and they were in Elizabeth's garden, grazing on her daffodils. Elizabeth loves her garden. I knew she'd be mortified, and I felt terrible because it was kind of my fault. I'm supposed to be her guardian angel. I'm here to help her, to make things better. And now, because of me, her beautiful daffodils were digesting in a cow's stomach. Well, 2 cows. 8 stomachs. Not good. Obviously I had to get them out. So I ran into the garden, waving my arms and shouting. At first they didn't want to budge, and I was terrified because I didn't know where Elizabeth had gone, so I didn't know when she'd be back. If she came home to find her dead ex in the garden, screaming at cows, that's got to be awkward. Anyway, I got away with it, and managed to herd them back into their field and close the gate. And then I was able to properly assess the damage. It wasn't pretty. Put it this way, I wasn't surprised when Elizabeth did get back that she took one look and broke down. All very unfortunate, but it did present my next opportunity to help her. It had been pulling an all-nighter, so I went back to the B&B for a couple of hours' sleep, and then returned to Elizabeth Street at 2 a.m. with a trowel I stole from B&Q. Stick that on my tab, Father. I spent the next few hours digging up flowers from the other houses in the street and using them to refoliate Elizabeth's. The idea was that by taking just 3 or 4 flowers from each garden, no one would notice, but it meant a lot of trips back and forth, lurking in the shadows so I wouldn't be seen, and my God, it was hard work. By 6 o'clock, I hadn't transported as many flowers as I'd hoped, but the sun was just starting to peek over the horizon, so I thought I'd best call it a day. Anyway, I'd done enough. The garden was transformed. It looked magnificent, and I knew Elizabeth would be delighted. I went back at 8:30 to see her reaction. When I reached her street, I could see something was wrong. The gardens where I dug up the flowers so carefully, patting down the earth so no one would notice. In the daylight, my handiwork didn't look quite so good. You could not notice. There were mounds of earth everywhere, surrounded by half-trampled flowers. And then you got to Elizabeth's, and my God, I couldn't believe the difference. In the dark, it had looked fantastic. By day, not so much. I'd churned up the whole lawn, and no 2 flowers pointed in the same direction. But it was too late to do anything about it now. I just hid in my field and waited for the fallout. Within 10 minutes, you'd got 4 irate neighbours banging on her door. They'd obviously followed the trail of broken stems from their gardens to hers. She came to the door in her pyjamas. What a sight, all bleary-eyed and confused. They were shouting accusations at her that she didn't understand. And when she saw her garden, she totally freaked. The neighbours refused to believe she knew nothing about it, but she seemed more distressed by the fact that she had a mystery night gardener. I can understand how she felt. She must have thought it was some total weirdo. Probably quite unsettling. So not the best result. But that's twice now that I've helped her, and although it didn't quite work out this time, I think I've proved the principle. By keeping an eye on things and stepping in where I can, I'm able to make her life better. It's every girl's dream. I wonder what I'll do for her next.